the ball rolling, I would like to, without much ado, invite my esteemed panelists for the fireside chat. I will start with the first guest, by name Buki Shonibare. She's the founder of Invictus Africa. Please, can you celebrate her with an applause as she makes her way forward? And my second panelist is Titus Ike. He is the managing partner at Sixth Element Analytics and Research Limited. Please, can you appreciate them as they make their way forward? And some minutes into this conversation, I'm going to invite the remaining of my esteemed panelists to join us, particularly to weave in their angle into this conversation. Thank you so much for your patience. And my name is Akinwumi Akinola. I lead the behavioral science work within the Policy Innovation Center. I know that time is fast spent, so I will just start. There is one of us who will give us a context setting as a student. I don't know if Toby Samuel is online. If you're online, please can you just give us what your experience is as a Nigerian student. What is life as a Nigerian student for you in 1-2 minutes? Toby, over. Is Toby there? Okay. While we're waiting for Toby, something very important that I noticed in the pattern of conversation, and I think the Federal Minister of Youth made reference to that, was the story that trended on the media some couple of weeks back around a graduate from a Nigerian university burning his certificate, and that was on video, so it was quite effacing and emotional for a lot of people. And that begs the question, what led him to that? Please let me know when Toby is ready for us. And that begs the question, what led us to this point? Where did we miss it? And how can we remedy this kind of situation? If you reflect about that, you will know that we are gradually departing from the times when education used to be very attractive and very, it is still valuable, but the perception, when you take the opinion of young Nigerians, it looks like we're eroding that trust in the value and return on education. And so just to set that context, Toby, can you just give us in 1 minute, what does it mean for you leading the student union government in University of Ibadan, particularly your life as a Nigerian student? 1 minute. We can't hear you. Yes, please go ahead now. Okay, well, while I wait for the technical unit to fix that, I will come to my esteemed panelist here. And I've had informal conversations with both of you, quite triggering conversations, actually. We are very passionate about this country. Both of you came from very humble background. You came from, in quotes, poor background, humble beginning, and at some point you struggled with even someone or getting the resources for your education. And that can be very disturbing in a place like Nigeria, where education is purportedly free. What's been your experience? What's your story? I'll start with you, Buki. Tell us what your story is in 2 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Buki Shonibare. My experience, I grew up in a family that, I don't like saying poor, but we were so poor that even the poor on our streets call us poor because things were really bad. I grew up in a family where I would wake up to my mom crying or, because she's being beaten. But beyond that is the fact that by the time my parents' marriage was falling apart, something had to give, and what had to give was our education. We couldn't go to school. But fast forward, I had my first degree in 2015. By the time I was having my first degree, I was already 34 years old. And a lot of people did not know I didn't have a certificate because at that time I was already lecturing in a university, which I did for 9 years up until last year. I was also doing human resource consulting, which was when I got to know Aki. And I was teaching HR. And I was earning good money from that. But in all of it, nobody ever asked me for my certificate because I had the solutions, I proposed the solutions, and it worked. Fast forward between 2015 and now, I have earned another degree, a degree in law with a first class, and then I've also earned 3 masters.
It's a good place to clap. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had my first master's in peace and security with the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. It sort of like opened me up to that space of the counter-insurgency that was going on in the Northeast. And so I got a call, to attend or to come for this master's program outside of the country, full scholarship. I did that master's, and going to the Northeast, Chibok and all of those places opened my eyes to what was going on. But most importantly, the deprivation of education for a lot of people. So I said, I must be a lawyer, which has been a childhood dream. And then I went to study law. Once I was studying law, and the thing about coming from a humble background is that the way you study is better than those who you are in the same school with, but they are children of rich children. So I was not just going to school to learn, I was going to school to also teach other people. And from there, I was deepening my knowledge. I finished with a first-class degree in law, and after that, I told myself, I owe myself Ivy League education. So I started applying to school, got admitted into Oxford, got admitted into University of Nottingham. Both schools gave me full scholarship. Fantastic. I did my LLM at Nottingham, full scholarship, and just recently finished from the University of Oxford, where I also had full scholarship. But that it is not to bamboozle you with all of this certificate and this scholarship that I have. It's just to say one thing. Your background and the certificate you don't have is never a determinant. Now I have
Can you say that again?
Your background and the certificate you don't have is never a determinant. Now I have the background. Maybe if people start getting to know me now, they will say because she went to Nottingham and she went to Oxford. But no, I think that to a large extent, I have paid my dues and I continue to reap from that. So it's just to say that certificate is never a limitation because I didn't have certificate at the time that I was paying my dues. Thank you.
Okay, please can we appreciate her for that? Very interesting. I would take you on further on that, but before I switch over to you, Titus, I know you've been through Nigeria, or Nigeria has been through you, so tell us your story.
Well, I like her story. I hope I can match it. So I'll start like this. From the year 1986 to like 1992, primary school through GS-23, I sold pepper and tomatoes on my head in the street of Lagos without slippers. I still have the rhythm in my head. Buy pepper, buy tomatoes, buy okra. So it was not just poor, but you contributed to even everybody eating in the house. And then first of 5. Fast forward. Should I fast forward? Yes. No, a little history. By the time I was done with secondary school, my dad said, I am done with you. That his father did primary school for him. He did secondary school for me. So I told him that, well, you're done with me. I am not done with myself. So, of course, I left the house.
Thank you.
I started working for like 4 years. I got into university at 22. Fast forward, I was the valedictorian, best graduating student. So I go back to what she said. Maybe because you are coming from somewhere, you don't look at what every other person was doing. You have your own determination. From that point till now, of course, I got job straight from school, Zenith Bank. I did GT Bank. I did an international NGO. And I presently have like 7 companies that I'm running. I have a microfinance bank, I have a finance firm, I'm prospecting an airline. So at the end of the day, where I'm coming from does not look like where I am right now. But all overall, whether or not we think Nigeria is bad, the education in Nigeria, for me, was still a great equalizer.
Fantastic.
That was what helped me to bridge that gap. Not like because the certificate was my meal ticket, but because it, to me, opened my mind. And so if there are young people here, or we connect to young people, it doesn't matter where they're coming from, just tell them that if you know yourself and you face the useless education we presumably think we have, is good enough to take you to where you want to go to. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Fantastic story. I'm aware that Toby is ready for us now. So Toby, can you give us my Nigerian as a my story as a Nigerian student in 1 minute?
Thank you very much. My name is Samuel Samson Globa. I'm a 500 level student of dentistry at University of Ibadan, and I'm equally the president of the Student Union. Life for me as a student started as a pupil like every other Nigerian child, putting on uniform, and all I have to worry about is food. I go to class, I return, and the cycle continues. Then I got to that big stage in my life after secondary school education when I have to determine, I faced 2 challenges mainly. One is determining what course I want to study, as that would determine the next phase of my life. And of course, competing with millions of other people who are also seeking opportunity for them to gain admission to the various tertiary institutions. I understand that about 2 million people aspire for admission to just about 600,000 space in our various tertiary institutions. So that's one of the challenges that an average Nigerian student, just like me, will have to overcome if you want to go beyond the secondary school education. Then I found my way into the university, and I have to cope with the everyday challenge of academics. And in addition to that is the prayer of finance. Finance is a big problem that we face today. As a person, you have to cope with payment of school fee. Ordinarily, it should be the worries of people that are financing you, but today is my worry. I worry about how do I pay my school fee, how do I pay for my accommodation, how do I live up to standard, and beyond all of that too. And as a union president, I can say that that is not peculiar to me, is a problem that is shared by several other people. Then beyond that, I also think of what becomes of me after university education. I have a lot of fears when I think of the uncertainties that the country holds for me. Is my future in the country, or I have to live? Is a life filled with so much inspiration, but yet with a lot of fear. I think that's what I share as a Nigerian student, and that is also shared by a good number of Nigerian students.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you for appreciating Samuel. I so much like the gusto and confidence with which he spoke. As a student, a lot of us would not have someone that courage to do that, even while we are students. And that leads me to my next question. Do you think Nigerian students are endangered? There is the argument that it's because we are not employable. There is the argument that it's because there is more supply of graduates than the market force can take up. What do you think makes us endangered, if you agree that we are endangered as a young person in Nigeria?
I hate to be negative, but I think that if we continue at this pace, young people will be endangered. And Nigeria, consequently, will also be endangered. And that is because, I'll give you an example. In between when, all the time when my life was unfolding, one of the things that I had to do was to work as a house help. I worked as a maid for 3 different families. 2 families here in Nigeria and 1 family outside of Nigeria. And while I was working as a house help, one of my madams said to me that I stole pomo. So now I'm very addicted to pomo because they also accused me of stealing pomo. That I stole pomo from the ewedu soup. You know when you are cooking ewedu and you cut bits and pieces of pomo inside. So she said the pomo in it was not as much as she wanted it to be. That was the one that stole it. You know, and in that experience, and that stuck with me in all of my house help experience. In that experience, if there was anything that I thought of doing, it was telling myself that I am going to prove this woman wrong, but most importantly, I am going to be a better person as a result of that accusation. 1,000 naira also got missing in the house one day, and she said I was the one that stole it. And those experiences stayed in my head. Why am I saying it? The danger of a Nigerian society that doesn't have an educational system that supports its young people is that you set us up to be dangerous to ourselves and to the society. And if nothing is done, we are going to produce young people. I have every reason to be hateful. I have every reason to want to, push back, and, fight back and not do the things that I do today. But not everybody will go through that experience and come out better and want to be a positive contributor to the society. Some go through that experience and they become something else. Yeah. So the question is, what is the experience of being a Nigerian student? What is it pushing out of you? It could push negative or positive, and I never fault, I never blame, I never judge those who go through that experiences and they become something other than what some of us have become. So I think that, yes, the educational system, and let me close my thoughts with this. The nomenclature now is education as scam. But let's deconstruct scam. When you have been scammed, what does it mean? It means something has been represented to you, you invested in it, but you didn't get the return or the outcome. That's what is happening in our educational system. In saner climes, they go to school and you are sure that coming out of schooling will produce something. But guess what? Nigerian young people are the most resilient people that I've ever seen. Despite our educational system, we still prosper in this country and we still prosper outside of this country. In Oxford, where I just finished from, we are at least 5 Nigerians in my class. Wow. That we finish together. Each person having one humble story or the other. So even though the system is sort of like justifiably could be called a scam, people are still navigating it. What should be done? We must change that narrative where education is no longer a scam. How do we do it? We've talked about the solutions many times. The policies that should be done, invest in education. Let's just do it. Until we do it, people will become endangered, not just to themselves, but also to the society.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Buki. Titles. Your story was quite interesting. The fact that you struggled through school and you now employ graduates, particularly young people. I want to find out, do you think that we have a waning value system amongst our youth? We were in a learning workshop yesterday, and Buki alluded to, it was not even an allusion, it was a factual experience where she shared that you now have association of parents of Yahoo boys in a state in Nigeria. And that was quite disturbing. So value system, we talk about employability skills, we have had to do hiring processes and do repeat interviews over and over again. What can you say based on your experience coming from the, in quote, hard side of life and now employing graduates in your organization? What can you say about that?
Can I differ with her?
Yes, you can.
Can I differ with you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I do not think the endangerment of the Nigerian youth and the education system is on them, basically. I think that it must not necessarily be on the policymakers, because if you look at our educational policy, they are globally competitive. But our society, from the way we are governed, has spoiled society. So the resilience in us can now push us, as you made allusion to, either to the negative or to the positive. that you told the positive is good, but I would not excuse you if you told the negative. Because I think the choice remains with the youth.
Okay.
There are individual choices in life that you must take. So I would not excuse somebody that chooses the other side. It does not, no matter how, it doesn't look good. Yes, in the chat. No matter how, it doesn't look good for me that you said the system pushed you somewhere. From what I also know personally, when I was in school, it did not bother me whether my lecturer taught me well. I just knew I needed to change my life. So I didn't care about them. I was focused on just coming out with the best possible result, hoping that that result would give me my meal ticket. And it did. But in that pursuit, hard pursuit, I now got something else that no system teaches you. It opened my mind. And that was now the difference. So if you can take the bad things happening around you and look inward and walk around it, you will come out better. That's what I feel. Yes. Okay.
Okay, I'll give you 1 minute to respond so that we can invite our other panelists.
See, I didn't say it's on the young people. Section 14, subsection 2B of the Constitution. The primary responsibility of the government shall be the security and the welfare of the people. You see that welfare, a lot is encompassing in it. So as much as we navigate the difficulties that we find, the responsibility, the primary responsibility, still rests on the government. Secondarily, you see NGOs like us, you know, philanthropists, private sector supporting the government. So it is not on the young people, whatever they choose to turn out to be. Like, personally, I will not blame them, because I have friends who went through the same thing that I went through, and they ended up becoming prostitutes. They ended up selling their bodies. There were times when I was going to school that I know that some people had to do certain things because they needed to survive. Shall I blame them for that? No. I'm also saying that the society owes them a primary responsibility to make sure that we don't force out the negative out of our young people.
Thank you so much. What a very balanced conversation. I think at this point, I would invite my other panelists. So permit me to invite in person. Some will be joining us online, but in person, permit me to invite Madam Maryam Uwais. She's the former special advisor to the president on social investments in Nigeria. Please, you can appreciate her better as she makes her way forward. And to join us also online is Azeezat Yaishawu. She's the founder of Ethics and Political Leadership Foundation. Please, I'd like you to just, okay, thank you so much, Azeezat, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. Yes, you can, you may, ma'am. I would start from you, Azeezat, because a lot has been said about taking ownership and young people actually owning the space. And I listened to the Federal Minister of Youth speak about voice and ownership in the morning. And you are a champion around voice and participation of young people, particularly in leadership and governance. What do you have to say if I ask you to gauge the temperature of young people participation and, you know, using the power of collective, particularly linking this to our demographic numbers? What would you have to say to us as young people in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm the Speaker of the Nigerian Youth Parliament, and I think those are one of the opportunities that have been afforded for me to speak on behalf of young people, or to engage on behalf of young people. So in terms of how well we've been doing in Nigeria, I think that young people are the focal point, or are the one leading conversation on change and development in Nigeria. We are the one that is asking for accountability, transparency, development, and for us, for Nigeria to be a country that is in par with other countries of the world as well. So I think that in the current times, some of the struggles since the time of the not too young to run not too young to win as well. I think we are bearing some fruits about having young people in decision-making process. And I think that in recent times, in the last few months, we've seen the benefit of the energy of young people in making decisions as well. We've seen what it means to have an actual young person as ministers, as SSAs, or as head or director generals for agencies as well. So we've seen the benefit, we've seen the energy, we've seen the multitasking, we've seen the interconnection as well, and we've seen the value and impact driven processes that young people who are capable and who have been given the opportunity to make decisions and be able to achieve. However, I think what we are still looking for is to have our community, support and believe in young people to hold specific political position as well. I think that that is something that we are still driving to achieve, and we will achieve it very soon.
Thank you so much, Azeezat. I will still, hold on a sec. I still want to take you on that, around participation. And you talked about giving. Let me rephrase, giving power. Also, there is that argument that you don't demand for power to be given, you take it. And as much as that debate is very heated and is ongoing, you have found yourself in a leadership position in Nigeria. A bit of your story and how you were able to get to this point, bearing in mind that there are structural barriers for young people to also hone their space. What would you have to say to that?
Okay, so I have a medical background. I'm still a medical doctor. I usually say this few years or few months is my lag year. I spent 8 years in medical school and I was exhausted with academic. But while in medical school, I've always occupied leadership position as the head girl, as the senior prefect, as the speaker of my student parliament, as also a member of the state youth parliament, and also partnered and funded organizations in the civil society as well. And so because of my interest in governance, particularly legislation and policy, I always want to have the opportunity to also engage, or the privilege to engage on behalf of young person. And funny enough, the position as the Speaker of Nigerian Youth Parliament is like a pseudo-legislative process, just like the National Assembly at the Senate. And so I had to campaign. I had to run across 22 states. It came with a budget, even though the platform is a learning platform. I had to connect with 109 young persons in their state, in their senatorial district, to share with them the values that I have or what I can bring on board as the Speaker of the Parliament for the next 2 years of the tenure as well. And so the barriers was there, and of course, one of those barriers is money. And, for me, it was a good shock for me because, I felt that, it was just like any other development engagement that we do, IVLP, Carrington, Washington, Mandela, Washington, where you just apply, or do some other things. But then I had to campaign, and then, of course, gender was in play as well. I think to some extent, I got the experience of what it means for women to participate in politics or to run some form of, campaign for leadership position as well. But I think that some of my experience and knowing the fact that we now have a generation of young people, because most of the people that I had to deal with were young people. Most of the people that campaigned for me were men, were from the north, core north, as the case might be, and I also had women who were also a support team for me. Okay. And so some of the things that we were discussing about, having women or having young people to participate or contest in political position was not really much of a challenge because I was dealing with what young people. Okay. And that brings me to what I was saying, like, okay, let's give young people the chance. It's not, a free love, like, okay, come and take it, we want to give you. No. But some of those community, societal restrictions that we have for young people, some of those things that we know myself as restrictions for young people, we've talked about finances all the time. Yeah. You understand? We've talked about this perspective that young people are not wise enough, or young people would not listen, or some of those things that we know is not a matter of their competence or their ability to articulate their thoughts or to commit to the process. So those are those things that I'm saying that let's give young people a chance. Let's get strong young people. And we're already doing that. So that's
thank you so much for holding the haze in that regard, Azeezat. Madam Uwais, Your Excellency, ma. It's a pleasure to see you again. You are... What's quite intriguing about you is that you've held very senior leadership position in this country, and yet you are still very much in touch with the base. And that's quite attractive. Now, in terms of role modeling, right, I want you to talk about what it means for a Nigerian young person to see leadership and want to follow, to see things done right and want to do it, to want to be stimulated and inspired to take bold steps, knowing that there's an enabling environment that would accommodate or that would stimulate them to do better. What would you have to say regarding that, knowing that you've seen both what it looks like from the policy side of things and from the grassroots side of things?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't think there are strict divisions between some grassroots, and because as a Nigerian, you belong everywhere, I believe, and you touch base with everyone because you are part of the system. I think that we need to recognize that there's a changing dynamic, and we need to have a growth mindset. Move away from a definition of success, or challenge the definition of success to be related to money per se.
I like that.
To personal fulfillment, to doing what makes you happy, so long as it is within legitimate boundaries, to do things that engage with your community. From personal experience, the more you give back, the happier you are. So try and support what happens around you. You'll be surprised at how much it now comes back to you. You know, sometimes when people say you've achieved so much, I'm thinking, how? You know, because you don't do it consciously. You're just supporting people around you. And then it comes back to you in a manner that you least expect. We need to begin to look at other skills in addition to the academic. And the academic may not be that easily accessible. I worked in my last my last 3 years on out-of-school children. And I found that for some, getting a certificate was not important. What for them was important was making the money that will enable them live a comfortable life. And so nowhere did I come across parents, and of course parents take the decision for us as children where we're going to end up. They decide we're going to go to school or not. They decide what schools we go to. It's completely beyond the control of the child. Yes. The thing is, no parent was against skills. Every parent, and the problem we have is a lot of what our outcomes are today is because we're not able to connect the dots to see why we are where we are. If people are able, if we can facilitate people gaining confidence, going into spheres where they are actually very, happy to be part of, then we'll see a more stable, more secure society. And this is not to say, I say don't go to school. We need to go to school because we go into the markets. Whatever we do has to be related to what the market needs. You need to speak the English to be able to sell. You need to understand the numbers to be able to actually make a profit. But I think that the qualification that is, maybe for us, it's very important for us. I insisted, for instance, that my children get a degree and a master's degree, and this has gone on. But I know that there are many of us who studied medicine and are now baking, and they're making money from it. There are many of us who studied architecture and are now doing fashion design. Yes. This is where you are thriving. This is where you are happy. And so I would urge that we look at critical thinking. Yeah. We look at the growth mindset, aligning what we learn with practical things, how we can benefit ourselves and benefit our communities.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll take you one more question. I'll pose one more question to you, which is around the definition of education, right? The construction of education, and why we have titled this session, My Education is Not a Meal Ticket, is that's return on investment is perceived as monetary. Yeah. And redefining, from what you have said now, redefining what it means to you as having a growth mindset to contribute. Even if it's basic education, you're able to contribute, and people can give you money, even in return, on the value that you're investing, without necessarily having monetary incentive as your or initial motive. I think it's very important. What do you think, if I ask you 3 things that education should do for us young people in this room, what would it be?
Well, I think being around other people, learning how people behave, you know, adjusting, learning to tolerate or understand. Okay, I'm a girl from Kano State, and I remember going to, I passed an exam to go to Queen's College, Yaba, Lagos. Then we used to go by train. And I remember then my legs would not touch the floor when I sit on the train because it was so, I was so tiny, you know. But today, because I went to QC, I have friends, I have sisters from all over the country, anywhere I go. And it quickly came to my realization that you really don't need, I mean, there are no differences really. We call God by different names, but our parents are all struggling to pay school fees. Our parents all have issues that other parents have. There's no difference really. Nigerians are struggling to do. It really opens your mind to the fact that the more you know, the more you realize how similar we are. So I think it's very important for an education to be wholesome in the sense that it's about learning to live and adjust with other people, with other cultures, to understand that it is, I mean, there is more to life than holding that naira. Because there are times when you can get into a situation where that naira cannot fix. You know, I think education also supports you, enables you to go to levels that maybe you may not have been able to, maybe because of your addiction. I think that also emanates, you know, maybe because of the way you learned. It takes you into platforms that you may not have been able to access before. So I think education is also very important. Then I think education should have a very strong component of values, ethics. It's very important for you to be open, to be transparent, to understand that other freedoms, your freedom ends where other people's freedoms begin. And to also learn that, you know, keep your word. There are many things that you get from an education. It's not just what you read in a classroom. You know, so I think I've said 3 now.
Thank you so much. Just to summarize, you've talked about diversity, tolerating other people. You've talked about so very many things. But suffice to say that having that growth mindset is very attractive, and not, it also helps us to build resilience when we go through detours in our career, our educational pathways. As we close, Buki, we know that in Nigeria right now, the out-of-school children is purported, was once purported to be estimated to be 10 million. There are reports around 18 million post-COVID. But it is also quite concerning because she alluded to having at least basic education. Because even when you take a bike, you are struggling to communicate how much with a person in a language. And he's struggling, he's fighting you because he doesn't understand what you are saying. And that is basic. You can't even do business, common trade. How do you think we can rejig our educational system to ensure that we take out a lot of these people from out-of-school situation to in-school situation?
Thank you. Policy direction, we talk about, you know, allocating more to education. We must, you know, meet up with the UNESCO standard of 15 to 20% of your GDP must be allocated to education. We also talk about the fact that our consolidated revenue fund, which is currently at 2% for basic education, should be increased. We've talked about all of that. But I really want to emphasize it, just in case I'm unable to say anything again before we close, that we must also redefine what education is. We focus a lot on formal education, but there is also informal education. Yes. And I must say that that transition for me between when I couldn't go to school and I was working as a house help, in between, I was standing on the street of Ikotuigwe and I was begging money, my mom and I. And even those times, and that aligns with what Auntie Maryam said, where what sense of fulfillment do you feel even in those periods when things are not going on well? For me, each time my mom and I go out and we go to beg for money, if we make up to 200 naira, you want to see the excitement in the house, because that means we will have at least fish to put in our food. There was that sense of fulfillment. By the time I was going through school, basic education, it was also a sense, which was when I got interested in mathematics, and I was teaching mathematics for a long time. And that's why I'm interested in data today. To also say, okay, how are you redefining education for yourself in a system where the education itself is not beneficial? How do you navigate it in such a way that even though it is not designed to take you to where you want to be, how do you rework it to benefit you? For me, I was teaching my classmates mathematics. When I was studying law, in case some of my classmates are here, I was also teaching law to my fellow classmates because I was finding that sense of fulfillment. But lastly, vocational education, just in case I'm unable to talk. I'm emphasizing that because after secondary school, my mom said they cannot send me to school any longer, I went to learn secretarial studies. You know, typists. Typewriter. So I learned how to type using the manual typewriter. Guess what doors that being able to type fast, guess the doors it opened for me. I have worked with at least 3 senior advocates of Nigeria in Nigeria. I live in Abuja today because I can type fast. Because a senior advocate of Nigeria recruited me from Lagos and brought me to Abuja just to come and work with him to prepare his briefs. So it is redefining education, both within the context of the supply side and within the context of the demand side. Yeah. Lastly, is to say that until we have a gender-responsive education budgeting system in Nigeria, girls will continue to supersede boys in terms of out-of-school children. It is changing right now, because we just released the baseline assessment, and we saw that even the enrollment rate is actually almost at par for the 2 states that we work in. The problem is the higher you go, the lesser girls that you find. So it's not just in enrollment. We must also make sure that there is retention in school and that there is completion of school. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Buki. Titles, looking at, let's niche in on vocational education. And I'm throwing this to you because you're an entrepreneur. And you've seen what the challenge has been doing business in Nigeria. You've been in paid employment and you've transited, and you have what the comparison is, especially as a young person. What do you think are the cardinal things that we must have in mind when, for instance, we want to do business in Nigeria as a young person? Because there are people here who really they're not using the certificate as it were. I had medicine, I'm not practicing medicine. I have an interest, like Madam Maryam said, this is my passion, this is what I want to do for a living. What would be your advice for people like that who are seated in this room?
Okay, thank you very much, Aki. Even if you didn't ask that question, I was going to go there because it was part of what we got as a brief. Now, going to your question that I did answer the other time, in over 350 people that work for us right now, we ran through over 5,000 CVs. So sometimes
5,000 CVs?
Over 5,000.
Okay.
Over 5,000. So sometimes it did not matter where everybody was coming from. What some people did with that their schooling is offensive to me. As in, you see some CVs or you talk to them, they expected to have gone through the system. They did not put enough on themselves. And I'm sorry I'm always on that side.
Yeah.
Because maybe that's where I came from. Yeah. I put enough on myself. So when I meet somebody, I expect you that no matter what is happening around you, there should be a personal performance expectation.
Yes. And
if you don't meet the minimum, you are not employable. So employability is not even on the system or the supply side. Even the individuals, the youth themselves, they are lazy. I'm sorry. They're lazy. Some. Not everybody. Yeah. Not some. Now back to what we need to do in educating ourselves. Yes, I have an accounting degree. first class. I have a law degree. I have a master's. Or I'm on the second one. I've not used any of them.
So why did you continue?
Okay, because good, very good question. Because in this Nigeria, they like education. I have never used any of my degrees.
Do you think it's a door opener? Like it can get you in the room to
changes
show your
mind.
competence?
No, to me, I think it changes your mind. But after that, what you do with your education is on you. So you don't need to, if you go to school, for me, if you go to school, it's just to, your mind to be, the character and learning that university give. It's not for a career per se in the place you are. If that place is full, it should open your mind. And then to buttress my point, I don't think any Nigerian youth should want to japa. It is my total belief that there's enough in this country for all of us. If you...
It's a good place to clap. Thank you.
As in, I must add this part. I have 3 principles for me. The education that they said education does to your mind what exercise does to your body.
Yes.
So if you have a good, I used to tell people, my mind is 8 packs, not my body. I have pot belly, it's fine. But my mind is 8 packs. Then the next step is, from the formal education, I got to educate my mind. Then the next thing, everybody must also believe in something that is higher than them. That's why if you see that my company is 6th element, 5 senses, but there's something that also adds to this our life. You must also add it. You must not call it by name or by sect. You must always, because it helps people to move from one stage to the other. Having said that, my advice to every Nigerian youth, based on that part is, I don't think God was foolish in making me black or making me a Nigerian. I don't think so. And I don't think the people that have been successful in Nigeria came with 2 heads.
Yes.
Where are we running to?
Yes.
If you look into the land, I have more ideas that can generate money than the money I can to use to invest in them. Yeah. Why are we not all here? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Please, can you give them a round of applause once again? We're way behind time. I would have wanted them to say one final remark, but Madam Uwais, we really, really appreciate your coming. Thank you so much. We feel honored. Bukishonibare, thank you so much. Titus Ike, thank you so much. And Azeezat, thank you so much for joining and your wonderful contribution online. Thank you. It's my pleasure to have hosted you. Have a nice day.